arguing, so I'll do my best with it. I just want to welcome Frances Black that's joined us today, just to say from a personal point of view that we're absolutely delighted that she's come down. I'm a big fan of Frances's work, both in the entertainment industry but also in the work that she's done in the Rise Foundation. So from my point of view, it's a real honour to be sitting beside her today, and I'm looking forward to hearing her contribution. I suppose just in the context of artists and musicians, I think artists and musicians have a huge contribution to make to social change. They're in a position where they already have the ear of people through their craft, through music and literature and paintings. So they're very, very important. But what's unique about Frances, Glenn Hansard, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, I'm a big fan of his too, is that they use their position of power within the industry to actually make social commentary. And I think that that's hugely important. And Frances and the Black family have always done that. They've stayed very close to their roots in their community and to the important issues in their area, and they use their position as musicians to actually further social change. In the context of the Rise Foundation, she's going to tell you, I'm sure, about her work herself, but again, a huge fan of that. I worked with addiction myself in Tala. The families of people with addictions need support as well as the addicts themselves, and I think the Rise Foundation has done a huge amount of work there that's very commendable. So basically, without further ado, just again to say, big fan, really glad that she's here, and hand you over to Frances Black. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll stay sitting if that's okay, unless I'll just try and project my voice as well as I possibly can, but it just feels more comfortable and it feels more, I feel more connected when I sit down. So yeah, I mean, when Joe asked me to do this, I kind of thought, I'm going to be speaking at a summer school, and what am I going to talk about? And the heading was, cherish the children of the nation. And I just decided that I would come here and talk from the heart. I did write some stuff that I might read out. I'm not sure. I like to have it there just in case, but I think I'll just talk, as I say, from the heart. And maybe if it's okay with you, I'll start by kind of telling you a little bit about myself, and why I am where I am today, and I suppose what has brought me there, a little bit of the background. I come from inner city Dublin, a place called Charlemont Street, very, very working class area. The houses when I was growing up were tenement houses, so the house that we lived in, there was like about 3 or 4 families living in it, and in the house next door there was like 12, 15 families with about 30 kids. You can imagine, like, there was just millions of kids running all over the place, but a great community, fantastic community, no homelessness actually. Everybody had a roof over their head, even though they might have been cold, but there was always food. If there was a family that weren't well off, other families would make sure that they looked after them. If there was a woman who's maybe her husband might have been an alcoholic, then the other community, the families in the community would look after that family, and those children would never really go hungry, Anyway, so my own story, I left school at quite a young age, and I was a bit wild, and I ended up, by the time I was like, 25, I had 2 small children and a broken marriage behind me. But that was a very important part for me, because it really, I suppose it shaped my journey, and I then went on into the music industry, and thankfully the music industry had been very good to me. I never had any intention, when I was a kid, all I wanted to do was look after children, and particularly maybe children who were going through a tough time, and that was my passion. But throughout my music career, I was always very passionate about injustice. It was the one thing that I would, I used to be out marching back in the 70s and 80s around the hunger strike, and what was going on back then. And obviously that was something that I just felt there was a huge injustice going on back then. And then all of the other, I think even before that, it was the nuclear power that we're talking about, bringing nuclear power to Carnsore Point. I mean, that's how far back I was, probably a young teenager at that point. So I was always very passionate about injustice, and I didn't like to see, I suppose, vulnerable people getting treated wrongly, I suppose. So my music then, as I say, I would have got into my music, so anytime I could, it's a bit like, anytime I could, I would stand up and I would speak, or I would sing at events throughout, all of the injustice that I would have seen. My father comes from a small island off North Antrim called Rathlin Island. So when we were kids, we used to travel up to Belfast. You'd get the train. We were very blessed. I don't know how. I think my uncle on Rathlin, who had a little farm up there, used to send home money to my father, and we'd all go up, and we'd get the train up to Belfast. And so I used to see, I used to see the army there. So I was thinking, why is the army? Why? That was very strange to me, because I felt like we're in our country. This is the same country that I just came from. So why is this all happening? And I remember another time when my cousin was getting married. This would have been in the early 70s, and there was a woman. The catering company came up from Belfast. I'm just remembering things. The catering company came up from Belfast for the wedding, and she told us about. And I was very young at the time. She told us about internment, and I remember being appalled by internment, thinking this woman, she had something like 11 children, and 7 of her boys were just arrested for no reason, just other than living in a Catholic area. So all of those things were all things that I used to get very upset about and frustrated. And so anyway, I suppose my music career took me off onto another level, and I was so blessed. Things happened to me that beyond my wildest dreams when it came to my music. But later on, and I've spoken very openly about this in the media many times, about my own recovery. When I separated from my marriage, I became quite dependent on alcohol, and for a period of time, and I realised that when I was in probably for about 3 or 4 years, I realised that I had to stop because I had these 2 beautiful children and I didn't want them impacted. So I did stop, and that's when my music career took off. But I learned an awful lot about addiction throughout that process. And you might think, well, what do you mean your alcohol? I would have been a kind of a bottle of wine drinker a night. So you might think that's not that big. We all do that. But for me, I didn't like the feeling of powerlessness. So that's why I stopped drinking, and I didn't like the feeling of waking up in the morning and being irritable with the kids and all of that kind of stuff. So I stopped drinking, but I learned about addiction. So this is another piece that shaped me and shaped my life. So later on in life, when I felt I was loving my music, my mother passed away. I'd left school when I was about 15, and my mother passed away, and she left us all a small amount of money, and she was an incredible woman. She came from inner city Dublin, from the Liberties area, and I wanted to do something to make her proud. And I know she was proud of us all, but I decided to go back to college and study to be an addiction therapist. And I was intrigued. I suppose when you're in that place of not drinking yourself, you kind of can see the chaos if you're out at night, and you see the mayhem that goes on, especially in the city in Dublin, and after maybe 12, 1 o'clock at night, you're thinking, it's like the reality really hits. So I went back to college to study to be an addiction therapist, and that was amazing. And I ended up working in a treatment centre in Dublin called the Rutland Treatment Centre. And I loved working with those who were trying to get into recovery from addiction, but I really saw the heartache for family members. So what I mean by that is, and I'd never really realised the impact that having somebody that you love so much, whether it be a partner, a child, a brother, a sister, a parent, and you're watching them going down that self-destruct route, and how devastating it can be. So I realised that family members, the person in addiction has a huge problem, obviously, with the substance or behaviour, but family members' hearts are broken and can lose their own power to the addiction, even though they're not taking the substance, because family members can have very high stress-related, the impact is very stress-related, very high stress. So you might have depression, very bad depression, anxiety, the worry, the constant worry takes its toll on somebody when you're watching, particularly parents, watching your child going down that self-destruct route. So I decided to leave the Rutland and set up an organisation called the Rise Foundation, which is an organisation that solely supports family members. And we run programs. Actually, we're starting a program in Navan on the 23rd of this month, which we're really, really happy about. And we run a 10-week family program, and we also have a one-to-one service. But it's a very, very strong program. So we educate family members on the impact of addiction, not only on the person that they love, but also on them, and how we kind of talk about it as a family disorder. The whole family are devastated by this. So the reason I'm saying all that to you is because I even though I'm still on tour and gigging and all of that, I just started up this program, and all of a sudden people started to come to us. We've never really got any funding until recently. We have a program or funding for Navan. But what I started to realise is working in the community and seeing other organisations, like working with homeless organisations, working with organisations who have, maybe who work with mental health issues, and addiction, obviously, addiction services. And I just saw the lack of services, and I saw the lack of homes, and I saw injustice going on. And it drives me mad. I just can't handle it to see that, there's a lack of services for those who have addiction problems. There's a lack of service for those who have mental health issues, depression, anxiety. There's not enough homes. There's children who are, homeless or who are living in hotels. I mean, like what kind of a society are we living in? This is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And, and I was talking the other day about Christmas, and we were talking about the queue for the sales to get into Brown Thomas on Stevens's Day. And then you see the queue for the people who are queuing up for the hampers, and there's a huge injustice there. So I decided then, last January, somebody suggested for my sins that I run in the Shannon campaign, in the Shannon election. And I thought maybe when it was suggested to me, I thought it was ridiculous initially. I thought, don't be so stupid, what do you know about politics, bearing in mind that I would have been very, very vocal down through the years, but that would have been as much as I've ever been. But I started to think maybe as I was working with the family members, and as I was working with the homeless organisations and other organisations, I was thinking maybe I could be a voice for the people who don't have a voice. Maybe I could be their voice. So I decided to run in the campaign, but I kind of thought, you probably won't get elected. But look, I love a challenge. I love a challenge. So I got advice from different people that I would have met through the Rise Foundation work, and I met different people, and they suggested, well, firstly you have to, who you're going to be canvassing is county councillors and city councillors. And I have to tell you, that was an amazing experience for me, because I wasn't really aware of the phenomenal work that county councillors and city councillors do. And I saw it, like the vocation and the time and the passion that, a lot of the county councillors and city councillors had. That was unbelievable for me. And I loved being on the campaign. And I rang people and I talked to people and I all the while saying, it doesn't matter if I don't get elected, this is what I want. This is the experience of meeting these amazing people. And then all of a sudden I got elected, which was a huge shock, right? It really was a shock. I'd say I was in shock for about a month, because I really wasn't expecting to get elected. But it was amazing, all of a sudden I realised, oh, now I can be that voice for people who don't have a voice. And I felt so privileged, and I felt so honoured, and bearing in mind, both my parents had passed away, and I suppose bearing in mind that we came from, the tenements, and we used to walk by Leinster House and go, look at the big house where all the posh people are. you know, and then all of a sudden I'm walking in the gates, you know, of Leinster House, and I hope and I want to represent the people that I was reared with, who didn't, you know, who really had tough times trying to survive. I also hope I can represent the people who have addiction, who have mental health issues, who are homeless. So that's why I went into Leinster House, and that's why I'm there now. I work very hard. It's a struggle because I've never been in politics before, so I had to learn really quickly. And you know, there's great people in there who would have came through the ranks. You know, county councillors would have came in, would have had a good suss of how it all works. I had no clue. I'll be really honest with you. But I learn fast, and you know, I believe. I get frustrated when I'm in there, to be honest with you. I still get frustrated, you know, because I suppose I can't get my head around, like, why. I'm only starting to learn as to what way, and I'm sure there's Fianna Fáil, I don't know if there's Fianna Fáil and Fianna Gael people here, but for me, I can't get my head around why they can't just provide homes for people who are homeless, or why they can't just provide services for people who have addictions, why they can't provide services for mental health, why can they not provide, you know, really good health system. So I'm starting to understand all of that, and I'm going to read out this piece, I suppose, and I hope this is okay, and it is, for me, I suppose, this is what I'm learning at this time in my life. And I'm going to read out this piece that I wrote this morning because, as I say, I'm only learning about it. So, and I kind of took this out from a few different things, so bear with me. So, firstly, if you don't mind, I'm going to just take an excerpt of the proclamation, because for me, the proclamation is brilliant. But this piece for me drives me all of the time. And this is the excerpt. The Irish Republic is entitled to, and hereby claims, the allegiance of every Irish man and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and of all its parts, cherishing all of the children of the nation equally, and oblivious of the differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided a minority from the majority in the past. Cherishing, so this is the piece I wrote around this. Cherishing all the children of the state equally has become a much used mantra over the last while as a result of the renewed interest in the 1916 proclamation. However, in a country where over 25% of the population suffer from poverty, up from 12% in 2007, it is clear that recent government policy has not had the priority of fostering equality among its citizens. In fact, government policy has repeatedly given priority to the interests of the very wealthy elites in this country at the expense of the less well-off. Ireland has become more unequal since the onset of the recession, when policies aimed at eroding government participation in the economy have resulted in a further filtering of money to the wealthy. For example, in 2006, 14 of Ireland's top companies had cash reserves of 6.4 billion. By 2014, this figure had reached 12.3 billion. Yet during this time, the government have almost ceased to build houses for poorer citizens, resulting in large-scale mortgage arrears and an explosion of homelessness, cut funding in the education and health sectors, and embarked on a sell-off of national assets to private capital. The interests of capital and profit have been prioritised over the interests of the ordinary citizens. The state will not intervene on behalf of the citizens, but will on behalf of the wealthy elites who have got progressively wealthier throughout the recession. And just a couple of examples of that. The Irish state went out of their way to rescue its bankers by offering what was arguably the most generous package in Europe. And that was a quote by Julian Marsilia. This is the guy I'm studying at the moment because he's really interesting. He's out on UCD as a lecturer. Financial industry and banks were protected at the cost of the taxpayer and citizen. An alternative would have been the attachment of strict conditions to the bailout, such as requiring that investment decisions be made with socially useful purposes. This was not done. It was done in Scandinavia with many positive results. And for example, Home Sweet Home, which was recently highlighted this issue, it's a perfect example of that. During the recession, spending cuts were repeatedly favoured over tax hikes because they tend to target programmes on which the poor and vulnerable rely to a greater extent, such as welfare, old age and child benefits, public health care and poverty alleviation measures. Taxes, on the other hand, open the possibility of capturing large portions of the income of the wealthy and corporate sector. When taxes are increased, they are taxes on consumption, which affect the less well-off, such as VAT, etc. As a result, between 2009 and 2014, the bottom 10% income earners experienced income losses of 21.5% and largest of all income groups. So we have the Apple example. We all know what happened with the Apple situation. So the Ireland operating as a tax haven which prioritises large corporation over small indigenous industry. Privatisation of key industry erodes democratic input into economic decisions and planning as ownership, and provision of significant public services is taken away from the public. For example, Bord Gáis Energy, National Lottery, Aer Lingus, AIB being set up for reprivatisation by driving up property prices to make its loan book look more attractive to potential investors. Now, I won't go on. I mean, I have written more. We can also look at the water charges and how, at the end of the day, there was definitely an aim to privatise by bringing in privatise water by bringing in the meters. So this is all stuff I'm learning, I suppose, and I really wanted to get my head around why the government do what they do. And I suppose at the end of the day, that really does. It gives us an understanding as to their thinking, which is a little bit worrying, I believe, because my belief is that we are not a wealthy country until we look after our vulnerable. And we all know, we have had horrendous week this week with the Chum Baby scandal. I mean, it's just beyond the beyond. The sadness that I have felt this week around all of that. I mean, again, it's just beyond the thinking of how people can be, I suppose, so cruel, how we as people can be so cruel, but particularly to children. Grace, there's another situation, and I've spoken on all these issues in the Shannon, and they're heartbreaking. They're absolutely heartbreaking. But what's really important now is that we make change, that this can't happen again. It is about cherishing the children of the nation. It's about cherishing the people of this nation. We are an amazing country, and it is time for change. We have direct provision at the moment. What's going on there? We don't know really what's going on. And that needs to be changed. We need to start looking at that. So, are we going to look back at direct provision in 30 years' time and go, oh my God, how do we let that happen? How could that happen? So these are all the issues. How do we let people who have addictions, how do we let so much self-suicide? And I could go on about the public health alcohol bill, but I'm not going to, because I'm sure that's a particular pet peeve of mine between the alcohol industry and a public health issue, and how powerful the alcohol industry are, and what they're doing to block a bill that is trying to save lives. It's so beyond the beyond. And again, it comes back to that whole, thing around corporation and markets and all of that. So I am aware I might have gone on a little bit. I want to say thank you for having me today. I hope I haven't upset anybody. I hope I haven't offended anybody. I'm just talking about what I believe in. I don't expect anybody to, take on board what I say, but it's just who I am, and it's just what I am hoping to work towards while